Through the window, the evening had already turned dark, the room lit only by the flickering light of my desk lamp. I sat at my computer scrolling through an old photo album, the physical kind, the kind that sat on a shelf, gathering dust until one day without warning, you decided to look back. A small act, but one that inevitably pulled you into a strange and nostalgic place. These were pictures from when I was younger, a time I barely remembered. Moments captured before life became too busy, before I retreated from everything and everyone. Faces smiled back at me, family, old friends, but they felt distant, almost foreign. It had been a long time since I'd seen most of them. Then I stumbled across one that didn't belong. It was me, standing in a sunlit park, my hand held by a woman whose face seemed wrong. She was unfamiliar, but the picture was clearly from a time when I was around 20, my features young, my expression carefree. Yet I couldn't remember ever meeting her. My mind was blank as I stared at the photograph, trying to recall where or when it had been taken. The woman had an odd air about her. She was beautiful, but it was the kind of beauty that seemed almost too perfect, like a painting, stiff, lifeless, as if she didn't belong in the moment. Her skin was pale, her eyes too dark, her smile unsettling. It wasn't a natural smile, more like something she had rehearsed for the camera. I couldn't pinpoint why, but it felt wrong. I turned the photo over, expecting a name or some kind of note scribbled on the back. But there was nothing, just the faded remnants of an old date, 2006. I swallowed. My throat felt dry. I couldn't remember any woman like her. I thought about the people I knew back then, friends, lovers, but no one came to mind that resembled her. My fingers hovered over the edges of the photo. Something tugged at the back of my mind, something vague and fleeting. As I stared at her face, I felt a slight shift in the air around me, like something had just moved. I dismissed it, chalking it up to the dull light of the room or the weight of the moment. But when I flipped the page to the next picture, I froze. It was a photo of my bedroom window. I recognized the room immediately, the chipped white paint, the worn curtains, the dim light that slanted through the blinds at dusk. But it wasn't the room that unsettled me. It was the woman standing outside the window, her face peering through the glass, her eyes wide and unblinking. It was the same woman from the previous photo, only now she was staring directly at the camera, or rather at me. I blinked rapidly, my heart suddenly thumping in my chest. I didn't remember this. I didn't remember taking this photo. I had lived in that apartment at that time, but I had no recollection of ever capturing such a moment. I never took pictures of my room like this, and I certainly didn't recall her being outside that night. What disturbed me most, however, was the unsettling expression on her face. It wasn't a smile this time. Her lips were thin, drawn tight in something that looked like a faint frown, but it was the eyes that unnerved me. They were so intense, almost as though they were studying me, knowing me. It felt as though she was aware of my every movement, of every moment I'd spent in that room, as if she had always been there, watching. I turned the page again, half expecting to see another image of her, perhaps standing even closer this time, or something more sinister. But there was nothing, just a blank page. Then I flipped through the rest of the album. More pictures of family, friends, pets, birthday parties, but no more images of her. I leaned back in my chair, trying to breathe normally. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My hands were clammy. I forced myself to rationalize. I must have taken that photo without realizing it. Perhaps it was some odd coincidence. Someone else had been out there, a stranger, and I'd captured them unknowingly. The idea of it seemed almost reasonable, but it didn't explain the deep sense of dread creeping through me. Why had she been in my bedroom, standing right outside my window? How had she even known to be there? More than that, why was there a photo of it, a photo I had no memory of taking? I reached for my phone, tapping out a message to my friend, Jeff. He was the one who had helped me move into that apartment. Maybe he would remember something, something I'd missed, something I'd forgotten. I sent him a message, asking if he remembered any strange woman near my window back then. I stared at the screen, waiting for his response, As I did, my eyes wandered back to the photograph of the woman. My fingers twitched. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed from somewhere outside, something like a branch scraping against the side of the house. I jumped, my breath catching in my throat. It was the same sound I had heard back then, the same eerie scraping that had often stirred me in the night.